Today we sit here in grief and we sit here in sadness to reflect on one of the most tragic and brutal events in the history of Islam and in the history of mankind as a whole. And this is the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And today I will just talk about the life of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra. But I will also talk about the specific circumstances which led to her martyrdom, as well as some of the important lessons that we can draw from her legacy and from her lifetime to implement in our lives today. And of course, one of the reasons in which the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam were forced to endure the suffering and the oppression that they went through in their lives was to act as role models for us and how we should deal with problems and how we should encounter them in our lives today. Who is Fatima al-Zahra? Who is she? She's not just a historical figure. She is not just a woman who we read about in our books. She is not just a figure who is part of a family. She is not just a person who we name our children after. Fatima al-Zahra was the symbol of strength. She is the very symbol of resilience. She is the symbol of unwavering faith and devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when she is faced with oppression and evil. The very story of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra embodies the entire Shia faith. It is an example of the religion of Islam. And the story and the lessons and the tragedy of which she had to endure inspires us and should inspire us to try and embody her qualities and her characteristics and her virtues in our own lives. Fatima is the heart of the sacred lineage, the heart of the sacred family, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the family of the Holy Prophet of Islam. She therefore represents, as the Quran testifies, purity. She testifies and represents knowledge and moral integrity, the same as every other member of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. And of course we know that the leadership of the Ummah, for example, is something which should come as well from the Ahlul Bayt, beginning of course with Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, as the first Imam. And we should also know that Sayyidah Fatima's unwavering faith and support for Amir al-Mu'mineen and his defense and her defense of the position for Amir al-Mu'mineen to be the rightful caliph exemplifies and shows that she had the qualities of a leader. She was not a follower. She was not an individual woman who did her own independent thing. No, she was a leader of women. She was a leader who showed strength and she showed resilience and she showed that she had a commitment to stand up and to promote justice, even if this meant going outside of the norms which women were expected to do at the time, even if this meant having to go through and force herself to go through difficulties in order to prove that the religion of Nabi Muhammad, peace be upon him, is something which would continue. And the true religious aspects would continue through Amir al-Mu'mineen. And so Fatima al-Zahra was not just a religious figure. She was not just someone who we read about in books. She was a political role model. And she was a political leader. And she was an activist of social justice issues. And she was an activist of general issues which affect the society. Of course, Fatima al-Zahra was born to Rasulullah and Lady Khadija in Mecca. And even the name Fatima considers and contains significant meaning, just as the name al-Zahra does as well. She was known as Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, which means the leader of the women of the worlds, therefore not just a title which is given to anybody. And this title indicates her significance and importance. And our hadith also supports this fact. One of the narrations by Imam Ali alayhi salam states that Fatima is the leader of the women of paradise. And of course, it not just highlights her significance in this world, but also in the Akhirah as well. Also in the world hereafter. And in our belief and in our madhab, this great woman is viewed as someone who we call an intercessor. And her status is often linked to that of the prophets which came before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, because she had the same qualities and characteristics as them, such as purity, such as knowledge, and such as the unwavering faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when faced with difficulties. And for example, the founder of the Islamic Revolution, Imam Khomeini, emphasized Fatima al-Zahra as a role model for all women. He says that Fatima al-Zahra is a role model for all women in the world, and her character is something which women must study and must emulate. Meaning, every woman should not just know Fatima al-Zahra as a woman who was good. No, they need to go and study her life. They need to go and read about her qualities and her characteristics. Because when they do this, they will see that there is a role model in her for which they should attempt to follow. The context in examining Sayyidah Fatima's life and also the events which led to her martyrdom are very important to understand why she is such a significant woman. After the death of Rasulullah, Fatima suffered intense grief, intense pain and sorrow. And at this time, to say the very least, there was a lot of political turmoil and unrest and unease. At this point in time, as we all know, and as is easily found in the books, Rasulullah had designated Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam as his successor, the person who would replace him as the leader of the Ummah after his death. However, as we know, many of the so-called companions who convened at Saqifa chose a different leader from the one which Rasulullah had chosen, something which was against the wishes of the Holy Prophet. And Fatima al-Zahra's fierce defense of her husband's right to the leadership and to the caliphate in charge of the Ummah is very well documented, not just in our Shia books, but also in the books of our brothers in Ahlul Sunnah as well. What did she do? She openly went and she openly confronted those who had taken power and who had stole the righteous place of Amir al-Mu'mineen. She spoke up against those who decided to go against the wishes and the commandments of the Holy Prophet, and she defended the Prophet's legacy. Not only this, but she then went a step further and she demanded that her rightful inheritance in terms of the land of Fidik was given back to her. And in one of her famous sermons, she declared, "O people, do you not know that Rasulullah has said that whoever takes the rights of a Muslim without a just cause, without a reasonable cause, it is permissible for him to take from the fire of hell." What does this indicate then about those people who didn't just steal a piece of land from anybody, but who stole a piece of land from the leader of the women of paradise, the daughter of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the wife of the Lion of God? This hadith that I just mentioned to you shows that she spoke in the face of these usurpers, the face of these thieves, and the faces of these criminals, and she showed that she would not back down. And she showed that her place as a woman was not to sit back and to let things happen and to let men deal with it. She took an active role as well in standing up for justice. These criminals who worked against Amir al-Mu'mineen and who worked against Sayyidah Fatima had already come to try and attack their house, the purpose of which was to intimidate them and to intimidate Amir al-Mu'mineen in order to make him give up his position as the Khalifa. And after they took the oath of allegiance, after they took the bay'ah from some of the other opponents, these attackers then returned again to the house of Fatima. And they tried to get this bay'ah from Amir al-Mu'mineen and from her as well, and from the other members of Banu Hashim. And they then proceeded to set the door on fire when they attacked for the second time. And Fatima found herself behind the door. And because of this fire, and because of the force of the attack of these criminals and their companions, she was injured in this process when the door slammed against her ribs. And this is the moment in which she miscarried her unborn child, Muhsin. It has been narrated in some of our sources that Qunfud, may Allah curse him, squashed Fatima between the door and the wall, which resulted in her ribs being broken. And in Kitab Sulaym ibn Qais, it narrates how that criminal ordered fire to be lit at their door even after the pain which was endured by Sayyidah Fatima was made known. And after this he pushed the door and forced himself inside that house. And he found himself face to face with Fatima, who called out, "Oh my father, Ya Rasulullah." Even when Sayyidah Fatima calls out, "Ya Rasulullah," and she calls for help, this criminal raises his sword even whilst it is in its case, and he hits Sayyidah Fatima with it. She screams out again, "Oh my father, Ya Rasulullah." This criminal then chooses to use his whip to attack Sayyidah Fatima. And again she calls out for help, "Ya Rasulullah." At this point, Amir al-Mu'mineen Imam Ali alayhi salam leaps up and he goes over to this criminal. And he pulls him and he wrestled him to the ground. And in the process of doing this, he fractured that criminal's nose and he injured his neck. And he was about to kill him. He was at the very edge of killing this criminal who had dared to come to attack the house of Sayyidah Fatima. But at this point in time, when he's about to kill him, he remembers the words and the advice that is given to him by Rasulullah and how to deal with these people. Therefore, Amir al-Mu'mineen says to this criminal, "I swear by the one who honoured Muhammad with the prophetic mission, that had it not been from the book of Allah and a covenant which was entrusted to me by Rasulullah, then you would have come to know that you are one who would never be able to enter my house." Therefore, this first criminal, he goes back and he says to Qanfa, "Go back to the house. And if he comes out, then that is fine. Otherwise, go and enter that house by force. And if he refuses to come out, set their house on fire." And it was said to Salman, "Did these people really enter the house of Sayyidah Fatima without her giving permission?" And he said, "Yes, wallah, and she did not even have her veil on." And this signifies what type of people these criminals who attacked the house of Sayyidah Fatima are. And there is nothing which can be said to admonish them of the crimes which they committed against Fatima al-Zahra. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will testify that these are the people who will be at the lowest points of the fire, because as Rasulullah himself, whoever has angered Fatima has angered me, and whoever has upset Fatima has angered me. Whoever angers Rasulullah angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. This is not just a very discreet narration in the books of the Shia. No, all of the major hadith books record it. Sahih Muslim records it. This is a hadith accepted by every single Muslim. And it shows then that every Muslim agrees that the person who angers Fatima angers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who oppressed her will face the wrath of Allah. And she passed away just a few months after her father. But she was not allowed to pass away and die in a peaceful, calm manner, the way in which we would expect somebody to be able to die. No. She was killed in an atmosphere that was filled with pain, an atmosphere that was filled with betrayal. And in one of the narrations, Rasulullah says, "O Fatima, you are the first one who will join me from my family, and you will also be the most afflicted one. You will also be the most oppressed one." The tragedy of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra's life and her death as well is not just something historical. It's not just something which I'm going to sit here and tell you the narration and tell you the story of without any meaning. It has to be a lesson. It has to be something which we pick up and we actually understand. And it's something which we resonate with in order for us to understand the struggles which are going through the oppressed people in the world today. In the words of Sayyid Ali Sistani, the martyrdom of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra teaches us. It gives us a lesson on the importance of standing firm against oppression and against injustice. And he says her legacy should inspire us to seek justice in our own lives. Again, how many times do we sit on the minbar? How many times do we sit on WhatsApp and we say that we wish we could do something? You have the chance to do something. When you see oppression taking place around the world, there is so much you can do. As we mentioned before, if it is not the case that you can do an action by your hand, then at least use an action by your word. Speak up against it. And if you cannot speak up against it, then at least in your heart make it clear that you are against this oppression. And this is the weakest level of faith, but it's something which we are required to do. Her legacy, the legacy of Sayyidah Fatima, cannot be measured in words. Her speeches and her spiritual and social and political life are a heritage, are a hidden gem, is a treasure which has been left behind for us. And all Muslims, regardless of Shia or Sunni, should focus on her life and on her martyrdom as well. And then they will notice that everything opens up and things become much clearer in the religion of Islam. Our Shuhada, for example, have taken inspiration from Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra especially. Shaheed Ibrahim Hadi, one of the most beautiful of the Shuhada, which I encourage you to learn about his story. When he was alive, he used to say that when I die, inshallah I am martyred. But when I'm martyred, I don't want my body to be returned back from the battlefield. No, I want it to remain lost in the battlefield. The same way that the mother of the Imams, Fatima al-Zahra's body was lost and has no tomb or grave around it. Sheikh al-Mufid has recorded one ziyarah for Sayyidah Fatima, saying, "Peace be on you, Ya Rasulullah. Peace be upon your daughter, the truthful, the purified one. Peace be upon you, Ya Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet. O chief of the women of paradise, O chief of the women of the world, O martyr, O purified one. Peace be with you, O martyr, truthful one, whose inheritance was confiscated, whose rib was broken, whose husband was oppressed, and whose son was made shaheed and was killed. And for the soul of Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, and for her father, and for all of the Imams, and for all of the mu'mineen and madlumeen and the shuhada, especially those in Lebanon and Gaza, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad."